Dan Brown, the unofficial LEGO Museum in Blair, Ohio. What you see behind me is the Canadian buildings built by Sarah. She was a adult fan, and I mean an adult. She was a grandmother that decided that she wanted to build all of the Parliament buildings in Canada, and much to the dismay of her family, she went back and forth to the Canadian Lego factory and bought brick after brick after brick, and we're talking 20, 30 years ago. So when she passed away, her family had all these assemblies in the garage, and they turned around and we were able to get them from Canada and bring them down. The import was kind of interesting, but we were able to do it, and they were being rebuilt right now.
Okay. So if you want to point out, these are recreations then, these are all real buildings she built?
These are all real buildings that she built. She turned around and put the different names, Saskatchewan Legislature on top. She built them to scale. We're getting attacked by bugs. She built them to scale, and she was well known for tearing them back down again if she didn't have the scale correct. So she would go through and count the number of windows, and if she didn't get it correct, she would turn around and tear it down. She built everything. She did doilies that went with them. She went through and actually made the wooden platforms that they sit under. She actually built the platforms for them. She was very, very intense.
Now, if you can give a little more detail on the story of how you got these, how did you hear about it and shipping them down here and everything?
Well, I found them for sale. I went up and they were trying to sell individual buildings, and I'm like, well, these are interesting. Let me make a phone call. And it was a friend of the family that was trying to sell them, and they really didn't want to sell them. They wanted to keep the entire collection together because a lot of people wanted them for the bricks. As you know, brick prices are very expensive, and the old windows are very sought after. There's about 4,000 small individual 1x1 brick windows in these, so they're quite valuable when it comes to pieces parts, but they wanted them to stay together, and as you can see, they've been a showcase at our museum for about 5 years now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they're really cool. So I don't know if you know much of the backstory. What did the family think of her building all these?
They thought she was nuts. They thought she was insane. She actually built a little museum in the basement of her house. I've got pictures of her showing people the buildings in her house. So I guess now I'm not the only museum curator in the Lego world.
Yeah, well, that is a really cool idea, and it's amazing that she got into it at an older age and was able to build all these buildings and everything.
The best part, the most ironic part is she never was able to finish her last building. So we're actually going to have it finished for her, and she's going to be here in the museum building it. So we've actually got her being built right now, and we're going to have her building her last building in the museum in the Canadian room when we have it finished.
That's really cool, yeah. And then there was a building over here as well, if you want to take us over there, that we shown a little bit. What is this building here?
Well, it says the Victoria, British Columbia Parliament Building. Let's make sure it's correct. Legislature, Victoria. Yep, British Columbia. We're good. I don't know my Canadian buildings that well. But as you can see, she built everything physically possible. There are some wooden structures on the inside where she turned around and she was able to keep the roof and things like that up with it. And as you know, some of these smaller windows are very, very difficult to keep in place. So we've had a heck of a time rebuilding these things because the windows just fall out. But if you look here, you'll notice those are very, very old windows. Mm-hmm. And she bought them directly from the factory, brand new. So
I'm not sure how easy that would be to do today.
No, good luck. Lego doesn't support the adult fan builders as much as they did in Canada back in the 60s and 70s.
Yeah. So. Well, that's really cool. Thanks for telling us about some of the story behind those and the buildings there. Appreciate it.
You're very welcome. You're currently standing behind the scenes at the Toy and Plastic Brick Museum. We have the Canadian buildings that we got from Sarah from Canada. As you see, they come in different forms, different pieces, parts. You'll recognize these as very, very expensive little windows. But we basically got her entire collection. Her son-in-law and her last son was going to respite care, I believe. They contacted me and said that they wanted to have the collection stay complete. They had offers on buying individual pieces and individual buildings, but they wanted the whole collection to be one collection. So here it is, and we're going to have a Canadian-themed room hopefully by next year. And once we get enough time to actually finish rebuilding all the buildings. And the neatest part is Sarah's going to be here herself, even though she's passed away. We're building her with Lego to be, building her last building because she never finished her last building. She passed away before she could finish it, and we're going to have her here finishing her last building.
Mm-hmm. So this is going to be the Canadian theme room then. You've got several of these buildings over here. When you're fixing these up, what's kind of some of the process you go for as far as looking for pieces? And
these are terrible. We have the pieces, but these windows don't bind well. They don't have a bind bindery mechanism. So basically, you have to push them in from behind. And that makes it very, very interesting to keep them in place while you're turning around and building a building. So we have to knock the back wall out of the building, reach in, turn around, and either with pliers or long neck tweezers, go in and push the windows in and keep them in place as we're rebuilding the entire structure. So that's why it's been a little bit slower than we want. But we're actually getting it done.
Mm-hmm. And when you're setting up a new room here, how does that usually work? When you've got an idea for a new room, as far as, like tables for display or shelves, or what? How do you decide to do all of that?
Well, sometimes it's pretty easy. Sometimes it is like we'll have a club that wants to do something, or we'll have a group that wants to do something. Other times it's more of a collaborative, where we just kind of come in, have a brainstorm. This is what we're going to do. Other times the collection is so large that it takes up the entire room, and that pretty much makes it that room. We have another room that's being worked on as well. That's the Chinese model room, and that is huge, so it's going to take up the entire room. Other ones we have to piecemeal it, like the room that we were just in, where we have a little bit of Disney theme and a little bit of Scooby-Doo theme, and we have parts that we kind of put together into a complete room.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, very cool, and I look forward to maybe seeing the finishing build here eventually when the room's all done.
Whenever we have the time, I sure hope so. It's these are more like fall and winter projects.